Our session today is about defending Europe's united front. As you know, European nations have been remarkably united over Ukraine. Most countries have been steadfast in their support. I looked up the Eurobarometer for the autumn of 2023, and the polling shows that the public support for helping Ukraine is also holding up. 72% agree with providing financial support to Ukraine, 61% support the EU granting candidate status to Ukraine. But, and there is a little but here, as we know from recent coverage in the FT, the EU aid package to Ukraine has been held up, and while European states have made strides in increasing and pooling resources for collective defense, they haven't hit their own target for the production of artillery rounds. Now, I'm delighted to explore these questions and others with a wonderful panel. Andrzej, Duda, President of Poland, thank you for being with us. Dmytro Kuleba, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, thank you for being here. Katalin Novak is the President of Hungary. Great to have you. And we will later be joined by Andrej Plenkovic, I'm hoping, the Prime Minister of Croatia. But until then, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya is the leader of the democratic forces of Belarus. Welcome. President Duda, I'm going to start with you. Would you say Poland was certainly one of the strongest supporters of Ukraine, especially in the first year following the invasion? But more recently, I've heard some comments from you describing Ukraine as a drowning person. Is that, did I get it wrong, or is that really what you said? And what did you mean by that?
Dear audience, if you could take your electronic devices or earphones, because I would like to answer in my mother tongue, in Polish. Po pierwsze, na to pytanie muszę odpowiedzieć tak. To, że stanęliśmy po stronie Ukrainy od pierwszego momentu inwazji, ale nie tylko, bo proszę pamiętać, że kilka godzin dosłownie przed inwazją razem z prezydentem Litwy, panem Gitanasem Nausedą, byliśmy w Kijowie właśnie po to, żeby w taki symboliczny sposób udzielić, jeszcze mając pełną świadomość tego, że prawdopodobnie dosłownie za moment Ukraina zostanie przez Rosję zaatakowana, bo przecież te informacje dochodziły do nas różnymi kanałami. Byliśmy z prezydentem Gitanasem Nausedą dokładnie w Kijowie i rozmawialiśmy z prezydentem Wołodymyrem Zełeńskim, udzielając mu tego wsparcia politycznego, moralnego, pokazując też zarazem społeczeństwu Ukrainy, bo to też było dla nas ogromnie ważne, że nie są sami w tej trudnej sytuacji. I rzeczywiście czułem ogromną odpowiedzialność za to, żeby w taki właśnie sposób działać jako prezydent Polski, państwa sąsiedniego wobec Ukrainy, to po pierwsze, ale po drugie także państwa, które w istocie, jeżeli chodzi o historyczną relację z Rosją, ma bardzo podobną przeszłość. Ta nasza historia, można powiedzieć, w tym zakresie jest wspólna. Oba nasze państwa przez stulecia i narody były ciemiężone przez Rosję i my w Polsce znakomicie sobie zdajemy sprawę, patrząc historycznie, co to znaczy rosyjska napaść, co to znaczy rosyjska okupacja, co to znaczy rosyjska niewola, co to znaczy zsyłki na Sybir i co to znaczy rosyjski terror. Więc pod tym względem Polacy, mogę powiedzieć, to nie tylko kwestia władz. Polacy rozumieją sytuację sąsiadów z Ukrainy znakomicie. To dlatego natychmiast po wybuchu wojny ludzie w Polsce tak gremialnie otworzyli swoje domy dla uchodźców z Ukrainy. Pojechali na granicę, do prywatnych samochodów brali ludzi wprost z granicy, których nigdy wcześniej nie widzieli, po to, żeby udzielić pomocy. Oddawali swoje domy, swoje mieszkania, dzielili się tym, co mieli. Właśnie dlatego, że rozumieli, co to znaczy, że ktoś ucieka przed rosyjską inwazją, że ktoś się chce schronić. Z tej samej przyczyny pamiętajmy o tym, że wtedy była mowa, może Ukraina upadnie w ciągu 3 dni, być może w ciągu 7 dni Rosjanie zajmą Kijów. No zaraz wkrótce, po kilku dniach okazało się, że to jest nieprawda. Bohaterska postawa prezydenta Wołodymyra Zełenskiego, jego współpracowników, jak również i obrońców Ukrainy, no, zatrzymała ten wydawałoby się niezatrzymywalny pochód Rosjan. No ale co było oczywiste, Ukraińcy zaczęli prosić o wsparcie, zaczęli prosić o pomoc. To dlatego my w Polsce w gronie najwyższych władz Rzeczypospolitej, no właściwie zaraz po rozpoczęciu wojny zdecydowaliśmy o przekazaniu Ukrainie ponad 100 czołgów z zasobów naszej armii. Czołgów, które mogły być od razu obsługiwane przez ukraińskich żołnierzy, bo to były czołgi, które mieliśmy w swoim posiadaniu postsowieckiej jeszcze produkcji. I ta pomoc od razu na Ukrainę powędrowała i to było rzeczywiście takie pierwsze znaczące wsparcie militarne dla Ukrainy, które w jakimś sensie, mówię to z dumą, w zasadzie otworzyło tą falę później pomocy militarnej, która do Ukrainy popłynęła. W efekcie przekazaliśmy Ukrainie przez okres tych prawie 2 lat ponad 300 czołgów z naszych zasobów, w tym także kilkanaście czołgów Leopard, najnowszych, jakie w danym momencie mieliśmy. Byliśmy też tym państwem, które stało, tak można powiedzieć, tak mówiono wtedy, na czele tak zwanej koalicji czołgowej, czyli właśnie idei przekazania Ukrainie tych nowoczesnych czołgów. Cały czas staramy się wspierać Ukrainę, ale cały czas również nawołujemy wspólnotę międzynarodową. Ja uważam to za bardzo ważne swoje zadanie, aby nie zaprzestawać w pomocy dla Ukrainy. Bo jeżeli, jest przecież bardzo proste, jeżeli weźmiemy pod uwagę potencjał Rosji, zarówno gospodarczy, jak i ludnościowy, to znaczy jaka jest różnica w liczbie mieszkańców pomiędzy Ukrainą a Rosją, w związku z powyższym także i potencjalnej wielkości armii. To jest oczywiste, że Rosja miażdży tymi wszystkimi wskaźnikami Ukrainę. I to, że Ukraińcy są w stanie przez 2 lata zatrzymywać kolejne fale rosyjskich ofensyw, to, że są w stanie odpierać ataki i jeszcze odzyskiwać przynajmniej w części okupowane przez Rosję terytoria, no to pokazuje z jednej strony nieprawdopodobną determinację i bohaterstwo obrońców Ukrainy i absolutnie nieprawdopodobną wolę przetrwania ich jako nie tylko narodu, ale jako narodu mającego własne, suwerenne, niepodległe państwo, w którym sami będą decydowali o sobie. A druga rzecz, few last words, a druga rzecz pokazuje także, że to wsparcie międzynarodowe cały czas pozwalało Ukrainie się utrzymać, bo rzeczywiście tego wsparcia międzynarodowego poszło bardzo dużo. Tyle tylko, że jest ono cały czas potrzebne. I zmęczenie wojną, to o czym przecież cały czas mówimy, jest zjawiskiem bardzo niebezpiecznym, z którym któremu musimy starać się zapobiegać.
Do you think we are in a state of war fatigue?
Tak, myślę, że tak. Myślę, że można to powiedzieć. Może to nie jest zbyt politycznie poprawne. Może niektórzy boją się głośno to powiedzieć, że tak, że to zmęczenie wojną, to war fatigue jest widoczne. Ja podaję bardzo prosty przykład. Proszę Państwa, popatrzcie Państwo na programy informacyjne w swoich krajach, na tak zwane newsy. Na którym miejscu jest Ukraina? Na którym miejscu dzisiaj w newsach w Państwa krajach jest rosyjska agresja na Ukrainę? W większości przypadków niestety nie ma jej w ogóle już w tej chwili wśród newsów. I to pokazuje...
Actually, I need to stop you there because one of the things that I found really remarkable is that stories about Ukraine in the FT are still the top read stories. I see no fatigue whatsoever amongst our readers. But let me turn to Minister Kuleba, because you wrote in Foreign Affairs recently that there were growing defeatist voices on Ukraine. And yet your own armed forces commander has described the war as a stalemate.
Well, he shared a message that was largely overlooked in the same piece. Everyone focused. It's just a matter of focus, you know. So everyone focused on the word stalemate. But what he also said, and that was the main point of his piece, is that Ukraine needs more weapons and more sustainable deliverables of weapons in sufficient quantities to move on with the liberation of its territory and eventually winning the war. So it's really, you know, how you look at the issue. Whether if you believe that the glass is half empty, you focus on the word stalemate. If you believe that the glass is half full, you focus on providing Ukraine with more military assistance in order to make our forces capable of pushing Russia back. And we proved that we can do that. In 2022, we liberated a large part of our territory, 50% of the territory that had been previously occupied by Russia. In 2023, we pushed Russian Black Sea fleet back away from our territorial waters, and that allowed us to restore the grain corridor that does not depend on Russia, that can function independently. And 2024, of course, the priority is to throw Russia from the skies, because the one who controls the skies will define when and how the war will end. And that will require providing Ukraine with planes, which are underway, F-16s are underway, long-range missiles, drones, and Ukraine significantly ramped up production of drones, and of course electronic warfare. So if all of that comes, we will continue winning and we will continue liberating. But you know, we are fighting a very big enemy, a powerful enemy, an enemy that doesn't sleep, so it takes time.
Do you agree with President Duda that there is war fatigue? And do you think that Europe and the US are in this for the long term?
I haven't heard any official, neither in a meeting nor in a private conversation, who would say, listen, we are tired of helping you. So when we mention these words, war fatigue, we should clearly kind of define this term. And if you ask me, are we tired? Yes, we are tired.
Of course you are.
We've been fighting for 2 years. Are we giving up? No, we are not. It doesn't matter how tired or exhausted we will be. We will keep defending our country. So it's absolutely normal for a human being and for a country to get tired. But it would be abnormal to stop defending yourself or helping us.
Do you feel under pressure to start talking about peace? I know that you have...
No, we don't. I can save some time. No, we don't.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay, we can move on. President Novak, Hungary is one of the 27 EU member states, but we often find ourselves wondering what Hungary's position is. I know that you have met with President Zelensky, but what your Prime Minister says and does is concerning, I think, to Ukraine and to a lot of other European states. So do you agree with Viktor Orban's veto on using the EU budget to help Ukraine?
Can I also use my mother tongue? Or I'm just kidding. I will answer in English, of course. No, I will speak English. No. I'm just kidding. And first of all, it's my first time in Davos, so I'm still
welcome to Davos.
Getting used to the traffic in the first place. And for example, last night I couldn't even make it to the dinner, and this time I can assure you that Swiss trains are in time. So I actually took the train to get here. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for speaking about this topic, because I think that even if we sometimes experience, just referring back to what President Duda said and Minister Kulaba, if we speak about a potential war fatigue, then I think the way we can do something against it is that we keep on speaking about this very and maybe most important topic for now in our neighborhood. And I also have to position us because we geographically are also in a quite specific situation, given the fact that we are direct neighbors to Ukraine. And not only that we are direct neighbors, but we also have Hungarian nationals living on the territory of Ukraine. So I can also say that we are not only indirectly, but also directly hit by the Russian aggression and the war in Ukraine. And I think that this conversation today also gives us the chance to concentrate on what we agree on. Because I think that the most important elements are not even questionable. That for the first moment on, I can even refer to my inauguration speech 2 years ago, when I already there made it very clear that I condemn the Russian aggression, and we have to make it clear all the time who is the aggressor and who is the country which was invaded by another state. And we should also make it clear that Russia has crossed the Rubicon by this act. And we should also make it clear, and I think that that is what we have been doing in the last almost 2 years, we should make it clear that this is a no-go zone, so that something like that cannot happen. And if we want to try to preserve our post-Second World War desire for peace, then we also have to clarify that war is never the solution and aggression is never the solution. And we tend to forget that Andrej Plenkovic is also here representing Croatia, so it doesn't mean that since the Second World War we haven't experienced any war on the territory of Europe. Actually, we did. In fact, in our southern neighborhood as well, for 10 years it lasted. So unfortunately, this war is still ongoing after 2 years of Russian aggression, and still we don't see the end.
Do you believe that Ukraine can win?
I think Russia cannot win, and that is the most important, and that we have to reach that Russia cannot win.
So for Russia not to win, do you think that the EU package should actually go ahead? Because Ukraine needs it.
Yeah, I think that we further have to support Ukraine for sure, and I can assure you that Hungary will further be supporting Ukraine.
Okay, that's a positive message. How do you feel about that?
Well, I firmly believe that Ukraine's membership in the EU, Ukraine's existence as a friendly democracy, is in the best interest of Hungary and whole Europe. And Hungary is a very close partner. We do talk. Sometimes we have different positions, but in the end we sit down and discuss them. But most importantly, whatever the kind of discussions we have, there is always a solution in the end. And the last European Council, when the decision on opening accession talks was made, just proved it once again. And I will be seeing Hungarian foreign minister recently. Madam President has been visiting Ukraine. President Zelensky spoke with Prime Minister Orban in Argentina in the end of the year. So we are absolutely focused on finding solutions, and I'm sure that we will find them.
Prime Minister Plenkovic, what's your assessment of European unity, and to what extent do you think it will hold for the long haul? Because this war, as we know, is likely to last.
Well, first of all, my apologies for being late. I came yesterday even on time for dinner, but today it took us half an hour. 7th year in Davos, first time being late. But my apologies. But a few points. First of all, big greetings to all the colleagues who are here and friends. As someone who knows Ukraine very well, who has been working with Ukraine, on Ukraine for many years, I firmly believe that we should be persistent in assisting Ukraine in such dire situation, facing Russian aggression now for 2 years. My analysis is that first year from the Russian posture was seen as issue of denazification of Ukraine, issue of questioning the identity of Ukrainians. Then as the war evolved, it was from Russian posture a concept, are we fighting a proxy of NATO? And now what we see recently is actually the debate or the posture evolving into the new concept of the new world order with an entirely changed balance of power globally. And in that context, I think we should see what are our choices. I said immediately in spring 2022 at one of our European Council debates in Ukraine that we need three elements that Ukraine wins. One, the motivation, heroism, sacrifice of Ukrainian soldiers, people, and motivating leadership, fighting for their existence and freedom. Second is continued assistance by the West, both in terms of military assistance and in terms of financial assistance. Otherwise, it's very difficult for Ukraine to be left alone. And third, to make sure that we in the West resist the internal pressures happening within our own societies due to the consequences on our economy, on our energy situation, our social situation, on inflation, as one of the ramifications of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So far, I think we have managed. That's why this debate on the revision of the multi-annual financial framework, I think we should see it very technically. What are we basically doing as the European Union? We are just at the moment where we would have been anyway been debating about the revision of the current MFF, putting into a formal structure what we have been doing anyway for 2 years. And that is on a monthly basis, transferring funds to Ukraine. Now we want to do it systematically, 50 billion, 17, 33, in order to have some sort of perspective. Whether we shall do it within or without the classical budgetary framework, I think it's a secondary issue. The issue is that we help. This is essential. And I think that is actually what is going to happen. It would be very good politically if we could do it in the framework of 27 altogether. But if we don't, I'm sure we'll find a legal and a technical way to do it and ensure this consistency of assistance to Ukraine.
Sviatlana, Belarus is in some ways another front in this war and in the EU's response to Russia. How do you rate European unity, and do you think that the opposition has benefited from the greater Western recognition of Russian aggression?
First of all, I want to remind how the fate of Belarus and Ukraine are intertwined. We in Belarus fully understand that without free Ukraine, there will be no free Belarus. But also without free, independent and European Belarus, there will be constant threat to Ukraine, to our neighbors. Until Lukashenko's regime is in the country, he will be puppet of Russia. Belarus will be balcony to threat our neighbors. So that's why a victory of Ukraine is of extreme importance for Belarus as well. And that's why we are asking to give Ukraine anything they ask, anything. And when you ask about fatigue, maybe I'm so deeply involved, in the situation in our region. I have to protect Belarus. I have to fight together with the Belarusians against Lukashenko's regime and the Russian subjugation. I think that we don't have right to feel fatigue. Because when I feel about the words of fatigue, I think, look, tell these words to Ukrainian soldiers in the trenches or Belarusian political prisoners who now are being tortured in prisons. They are continuing to resist, so we should continue to work together with them as well. But, of course, I understand that Belarus is the weakest point, weakest link in Putin's war. Now, while Lukashenko is there, Putin is using our country as a playground, they're using our infrastructure to keep threatening Ukraine. But when we get rid of Lukashenko's regime, when democratic government will be installed in Belarus, there will be the best the best way out, for Belarusians, the best help for Ukraine. So that's why we have to keep coalition of countries who are supporting Ukraine and have to develop comprehensive strategy on Belarus. We need pressure on the regime, support to people, accountability for Lukashenko's crimes, and also commitment to future. And I want here to underline sometimes, indecisiveness of democratic world. Lukashenko committed many crimes against humanity. He hijacked airplane, he orchestrated migration crisis, he's kidnapping Ukrainian children from occupied territories to Belarus. And we need special investigation for the crimes. Why international structures are working not so effective than they could do. So I believe that with consistency and decisiveness, we can get Belarus out of the war with help of Belarusian democratic forces. And thank you to our strategic partners, in supporting us.
Do you think he's been strengthened by the war because he's now part of the Russian front?
Lukashenko now is very fragile. Maybe it seems differently, from abroad, but he feels fragile. He haven't managed to persuade Belarusian people in his legitimacy. He's illegitimate in the eyes of Belarusian people. He's puppet of Russia. He can't decide anything by his own, in Belarus. But he needs political support of Russia, and he will fulfill all the orders of Russia. And our task is to make Lukashenko toxic to his own environment and to weaken him through sanctions and through accountability.
I want to switch to another topic that is very important to European unity, and that is what happens in the US elections. I know you've probably all had conversations already about anxiety in Europe over the possible election of Donald Trump. President Duda, are you worried that a Trump election will reopen divergent views in Europe, which is what we saw last time around? You're smiling.
Przede wszystkim, proszę Państwa, przede wszystkim zawsze powtarzam, to Amerykanie decydują o tym, kto będzie ich prezydentem. Tak jak każde z naszych społeczeństw, każdy z naszych narodów sam decyduje o tym, kto będzie prezydentem. Jeżeli mamy powszechne wybory prezydenckie, w swoim kraju różnie to bywa, czasem są wybory prezydenckie powszechne, czasem nie, ale jeżeli są powszechne, to naród decyduje rzeczywiście o tym, kto jest prezydentem i jakiekolwiek interweniowanie z zewnątrz w tej kwestii uważam za nie na miejscu. Więc mówienie tutaj, co będzie lepsze dla Stanów Zjednoczonych, czy kiedy prezydentem będzie ta osoba, czy inna osoba, z punktu widzenia polityków zawsze jestem tutaj ostrożny. Natomiast co mogę powiedzieć o moim podejściu do Stanów Zjednoczonych jako prezydenta Rzeczypospolitej? Ja uważam tak. Więzi euroatlantyckie to jest sprawa absolutnie fundamentalna. Historia nauczyła tego Europę i Stany Zjednoczone, nie tylko Europę, ale również Stany Zjednoczone. Podkreślam to zawsze, bo mówiłem to również do kolejnych prezydentów Stanów Zjednoczonych, a pracowałem już z trzema prezydentami, z Barackiem Obamą, z prezydentem Donaldem Trumpem i dzisiaj z prezydentem Joe Bidenem. To jest relacja, która jest opłacalna w obie strony. Jeżeli dochodzi w Europie do wojny, Stany Zjednoczone, do wielkiej wojny, Stany Zjednoczone, co pokazała pierwsza, druga wojna światowa, muszą przyjść, żeby sprawę załatwić, wesprzeć w tym zakresie Europę, żeby Europa odzyskała spokój. Giną ludzie w Europie, giną żołnierze ze Stanów Zjednoczonych. Dla wszystkich jest to niekorzystne, więc najlepiej trzymać współpracę cały czas, tak żeby do wojny nie dochodziło, żeby umieć zawsze realizować ten balans bezpieczeństwa tak niezwykle potrzebny Dla mnie to jest jasne, więc umacnianie tych więzi euroatlantyckich to jest kwestia fundamentalna i tu uważam, że powinniśmy nad nimi pracować niezależnie od tego, kto jest prezydentem Stanów Zjednoczonych. Stany Zjednoczone powinny nad tym pracować niezależnie od tego, kto rządzi w Europie, a Europa powinna nad tym pracować niezależnie od tego, kto rządzi w Stanach Zjednoczonych. Takie jest moje osobiste przekonanie. Natomiast jeżeli chodzi o polski interes, ja uważam tak. Obowiązkiem prezydenta Polski zawsze jest dbać o jak najlepsze relacje ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi. I nieważne jest, z jakiej opcji politycznej w Stanach Zjednoczonych pochodzi prezydent, czy to jest demokrata, czy to jest republikanin, czy może kiedyś w przyszłości będzie to jakaś inna grupa polityczna. To jest interes, który ma absolutnie ponadpolityczne znaczenie w tym ujęciu amerykańskim wewnętrznym, czy jakimkolwiek ideowym. Najważniejszą kwestią jest bezpieczeństwo, umacnianie wspólnoty euroatlantyckiej i to jest podstawowe zadanie. Dlatego ja z dużym spokojem patrzę na wybory w Stanach Zjednoczonych. Chciałbym, żeby one przebiegły spokojnie. Mnie owszem, najbardziej niepokoją takie zjawiska jak te zamieszki, z którymi mieliśmy do czynienia po ostatnich wyborach prezydenckich w Stanach Zjednoczonych. Tak, to jest sytuacja, gdzie widzimy, że potencjalnie jakaś stabilność w Stanach Zjednoczonych może być naruszona. To jest zjawisko, które możemy obserwować jako niebezpieczne. Natomiast jeżeli to jest normalny proces demokratyczny kolejnych wyborów, no każdy wybór będziemy musieli przyjąć. Taka jest prawda. My jako prezydenci Europy, my jako ci, którzy nie głosują za prezydentem Stanów Zjednoczonych, każdy wybór musimy przyjąć i każdy wybór musimy zaakceptować i starać się w tym zakresie współpracować jak najlepiej. No oczywiście pokazując również ze swojej strony wolę tej współpracy, ale układającej się na zasadzie obustronnych interesów. To znaczy to musi być taki układ, w którym obie strony wygrywają. Dlatego my, przygotowując się do polskiej prezydencji w 2025 roku w Unii Europejskiej, bo na początku 2025 roku Polska obejmie prezydencję w Radzie Unii Europejskiej. Wśród priorytetów przyjętych przez nas na ten okres dla nas jako prezydencji, ale także dla Unii Europejskiej przyjęliśmy umacnianie jedności euroatlantyckiej. Mówimy więcej Europy w Stanach Zjednoczonych, więcej Stanów Zjednoczonych w Zjednoczonej Europie, więcej wspólnych interesów, więcej wspólnych relacji gospodarczych, także więcej wspólnych relacji, jeżeli chodzi o bezpieczeństwo. Kolejnymi priorytetami jest przyjęcie nowych krajów członkowskich, w tym Ukrainy, Mołdawii, państw Bałkanów Zachodnich, a kolejnym wreszcie bezpieczeństwo energetyczne Europy, bo te kwestie uważamy za najważniejsze. Ale tym pierwszym priorytetem jest bezpieczeństwo, bezpieczeństwo i jeszcze raz bezpieczeństwo, zarówno gospodarcze, jak i bezpieczeństwo militarne, a tutaj kluczem są więzi euroatlantyckie. Jeżeli chodzi o kwestie gospodarcze, w moim przekonaniu pokazał to COVID, kiedy łańcuchy dostaw z Azji, z Chin się zerwały, kiedy były problemy. Ta więź euroatlantycka tutaj rzeczywiście pokazała swoje kluczowe znaczenie i nie mam żadnych wątpliwości, że trzeba ją umacniać. To raz. Po drugie, budować nasz oczywiście potencjał europejski, jeżeli chodzi o gospodarkę, no ale jeżeli chodzi o bezpieczeństwo, no to więź euroatlantycka ma tutaj znaczenie absolutnie fundamentalne.
Minister Kuleba, you're a diplomat, so I expect a diplomatic answer, but I will ask anyway. Are you calm?
Always.
Say more.
Listen, we Ukrainians, we've learned how to survive and prevail in any reality. Whatever the choice the people of America will make, we will work with that reality, and we will be finding solutions that benefit our country, but also transatlantic security and global security as a whole. Frankly, I'm more concerned with what will happen on day one and further on after elections, because it really matters that the United States political system remains focused, that America will not drown into domestic fights, spending resources, political resources, on fixing entirely inter-party discussions and issues. because America is important for global stability. And America will have to remain focused on global issues. And Ukraine is one of those global issues. So when it comes to names, I mean, we have experience. President Zelensky had this short period of interaction with President Trump while he was still in office. And, you know, there were different moments, but we should all remember that it was actually President Trump who sold us the first lethal weapons, the javelins. It was not the Obama administration. Trump's administration issued the Crimea Declaration, turning policy into irreversible policy, the policy of non-recognition of the illegal annexation. The first patrol boats, Mark 6 and Islanders, this program was cleared by the Trump administration. We started receiving them to reinforce our Navy. So we have to respect the choice of the people of America. We will remain very realistic, very focused, and we will be finding solutions because there is just no other way for us but to find these solutions.
Let me bring the audience in. If there is a question, I see a hand there.
It's a question for Minister Kuleba. The counter-offensive didn't really work very well. So my question for you is, do you expect to be facing questions, not so much from international supporters, but from Ukrainian society as to what is the path to victory and how you would define victory in 2024?
You know, the landing of Allied forces in Normandy in 1944 did not end very well immediately, right? And the Ardennes counteroffensive of the Nazi Germany was pretty successful. And no one was asking these kind of questions back then, because everyone realized that there was an evil that allies were fighting against, that war consists of different battles, and if we remain focused on the struggles and battles which were not as successful as expected, then we will, of course, help to proliferate defeatist voices, and we will reinforce the Russian message, because it's the Russian message. The Russian narrative is out there that, you see, you cannot beat us on the ground. But I made my point earlier before. We defeated them on the ground in 2022. We defeated them on the sea in 2023. And we are completely focused on defeating them in the air in 2024. So let's focus on winning the war and not on finding arguments, which I find artificial, with all respect, on why we cannot win the war.
Excuse me, can I join to that as well with just some reference? Because I think it is important that we also study the experience of the First and Second World War, of course, but we have to avoid to find ourselves in a Third World War. So that is just something that I would like to emphasize, that actually NATO is not at war, and the European Union is not at war for now. And I think what we have to avoid is that militarily also getting involved and also avoid the escalation of the war. So we have to support Ukraine in its fight, in its protection of its homeland. But I think what is so precious for us, I'm also a mother of 3 children, that we live still in a peaceful country, and we have to keep our countries safe. I think we have to keep all our countries safe and try to do our utmost in order to avoid the escalation of the war. It, of course, in the meantime, means that we keep further supporting Ukraine in its fight.
But go back to my earlier question then. Do you think that Ukrainian victory is important for the protection of the rest of Europe?
And I come back to my previous answer when I say that we have to make it clear that aggression is not a way. Aggression, it won't work. That is why I say that
so it's
Russia shouldn't win
rather
this war.
than.
That's why I'm saying that Russia should not win this war and cannot win this war. And I think that is what we have to keep in mind. And we have to support.
But you can have a frozen conflict, and you can say that Russia hasn't won this war. But a frozen conflict would be.
Yes, you can have a frozen conflict. And I don't think that this remaining 5 minutes enable us to find a solution. solution to the war, but I think what actually Ukraine is working on is a peace formula. So Ukraine has put on the table a peace formula. Hungary has also joined. All of our countries actually are there at the table. That's what we are working on, because our ultimate goal should be, at the end of the day, peace. We should keep that in mind. The question is for now how we can get to that, but we shouldn't forget that. And I don't think we can solve this in 5 remaining minutes.
Let's try anyway. Who else has a question? Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, everybody. You've mentioned the United States a lot during this, but no one's mentioned the other global superpower. What's the role of China during 2024 to solve this crisis?
Who'd like to take it?
Well, I think, first of all, when it comes to the United States, since you said you wanted all of us to comment, I think Europe needs the United States involved, attached to the values and principles that are basically freedom and democracy and peace. And that's why I think whatever happens in the elections in November, we have to strive for an engaged United States regarding the assistance to Ukraine. I'm not saying it's an immediate effect on the level of support to the European Union, but any change will politically have some sort of repercussions. This is how the world works. That's why I think we need this commitment, but at the same time, European Union should really strengthen its defense capabilities. And this is, I think, a development that all of us have understood and all of us are clearly engaged. My country, which is one of the smaller countries, has increased its budget over the last 7 years in terms of defense spending more than 100%, just to give you an idea. And the capabilities, whether it's in our Air Force or our land forces or our Marine, it's being something that is a part of the normal and well understood and in the societal terms accepted investments. When it comes to China, I think our key element is that China remains out of the conflict when it comes to Russia's aggression against Ukraine, and that it remains an interlocutor of the West in striving for peace. This, I think, should be our main objective. And I think, especially in the context of the attempt of a new world order with the BRICS, with different poles, creating a globe that has a rather different structure and shape than it had, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And one final point. Current Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it's not only 2 years. This is the second phase of the process that started 10 years ago. And I think we should understand it in such a way. It's a well-planned situation where the state of play in terms of current situation in the field is that we have 2 more Ukrainian regions being temporarily occupied. This is where we are.
I want Sviatlana to come in on China in particular. Do you have any contact with China? Do you discuss Belarus with them?
No, actually, we as Democratic Forces don't have communication with China because at the moment they are somehow supporting Belarusian regime, though we know the Chinese, they are very pragmatic and they stopped much cooperation with Belarus, but nevertheless. But we see that dictators, tyrannies in the world, they are making coalitions. And it's a huge threat to the democratic world. And, when sometimes I hear that, we shouldn't be involved in this war in Ukraine, we have to keep our country safe, it's propagandistic narrative, Russian narrative, that it's not your war, it's Ukrainians' war. Let them, fight this issue themselves. But I suppose that one day, if we let things to be like this, the enemy, tyranny, will knock your doors. And what you are going to do, many years of appeasements and attempts of re-educate dictators, they haven't worked. And half measures only harm the situation. Because I see now, some countries, on the one hand, they are condemning the war. On the other hand, they are continuing to trade with Russia. They are creating loopholes for trade with Russia. So it should be stopped. Are there any other questions?
Okay, then I would like to ask about European defense and maybe President Duda. Do you need champions? Do you need companies to actually merge and create European champions? Because one of the problems that we've seen, and not just in Ukraine, is the shortages in munitions in particular, but not only munitions. How do you resolve that long term? We know that we are living in a much more complicated world. War is back. What do you think?
Problem bardzo poważny i powiedziałbym wręcz wstydliwy, tak, że nagle okazało się, że w naszych...
And less than 1 minute.
Nagle się okazało, że w naszych europejskich zasobach praktycznie rzecz biorąc nie mamy zapasów do tego, by na wypadek poważnej agresji w ogóle Europa była w stanie się obronić. Nie mam żadnych wątpliwości, że powinniśmy zacieśnić kooperację wewnątrz Europy, w ramach Unii Europejskiej, jeżeli chodzi o produkcję amunicji, jeżeli chodzi o opracowanie nowych rodzajów uzbrojenia. Także uważam, że współpraca europejska w budowie na przykład czy to europejskiego czołgu, czy rozwoju europejskiego lotnictwa na poziomie właśnie unijnym absolutnie powinna być zacieśniana i tutaj wspólne projekty z mojego punktu widzenia są jak najbardziej mile widziane. Ta produkcja amunicji rzeczywiście jest takim elementem bardzo wymownym. Tak? Tej amunicji de facto cały czas brakuje. Oczywiście tam jest problem amunicja w standardzie natowskim i amunicja w standardzie tym postsowieckim, prawda, którego przynajmniej na początku wojny Ukraina używała w przeważającej mierze. Te zasoby tej amunicji z dawnych czasów już się kończą. U nas w zasadzie już jej prawie nie mamy, ale cały czas mamy za mało tej amunicji w standardach natowskich i biorąc pod uwagę niestety pogarszającą się sytuację bezpieczeństwa w Europie i te zagrożenia, o których dzisiaj mówimy, z jednej strony zagrożenie imperializmem rosyjskim, niestety w moim przekonaniu narastające cały czas. Z drugiej strony wspominamy tutaj o Chinach i cały czas była mowa, że nie wiadomo jaki będzie efekt wyborów na Tajwanie prezydenckich, które odbyły się kilka dni temu, jaka tam będzie sytuacja. To wszystko pokazuje, że zachowanie gotowości do udzielenia odpowiedzi w przypadku jakichkolwiek zachowań agresywnych, nie tylko wobec nas bezpośrednio, ale także tam, gdzie będziemy nieśli pomoc, to przygotowanie do tego i gotowość do tego dzisiaj jest niezbędna. Więc absolutnie współpraca gospodarcza, współpraca przemysłowa w tym zakresie na poziomie europejskim to jest coś, co powinniśmy stanowczo realizować.
Well, as President Novak said, we have not solved the Ukraine question, but I hope that we have been able to contribute a little bit to the debate. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much.